Okay. Well, the other issue that you raised that was interesting was the question of liability. And sometimes we have clients who ask us about innocent spouse relief, or people who are concerned about income tax returns that have been filed in the past that may not have been 100% accurate. How can you explain innocent spouse relief and how that works?
Yeah, so again, when you have two spouses that end up signing a tax return, both spouses are jointly and severally liable. So to the extent that you have spouses that separate and one spouse does not, there might be a tax liability from a prior year. The IRS is ultimately going to go after either spouse, whoever will pay. There is relief between the spouses that can occur, but where innocent spouse comes in, it's one of 2 or 3 different options in which you can apply to have the government remove that joint and several liability. There is innocent spouse, there is separation liability, and I believe there's a catch-all equitable relief. So if you don't quite fit into one of the categories, you might qualify for equitable relief. And with any of these types of relief, they really hinge on the fact that it truly needs to be an innocent party, that it was something that the spouse, they may not have been intimately aware of the comings and goings, but they or a reasonable person would have had cause to ask questions and become aware.
So again, sounds very fact specific and like something you want to talk about with your own advisors. Is that right?
Yeah, and I would say to the extent that you have something like that pops up, I think that I think that there are a lot of things that come out as part of a divorce, and a lot of conversational stories, and that it's certainly something that should be discussed either with tax professional or potentially separate counsel, in terms of not going back to the same tax preparer, but maybe you engage in a relationship with a different tax preparer to think about how that spouse is going to take steps forward to protect themselves long term.
Okay, and just generally, no matter what the reason, if parties own or owe tax debt together on jointly filed tax returns, or maybe they fail to file tax returns, it sounds like that debt is joint and several.
Yeah, so many times it's quite common to parse out that responsibility as part of the separation agreement, but ultimately the IRS will look to either party to satisfy, and to the extent that it was the responsibility of one party versus the other, once the IRS gets satisfied, it's up to the parties to deal with each other at that point. So, very important to make sure that if there are concerns that potentially getting a worst case scenario opinion from a tax professional as to what the potential liability might be out there, so the parties can be prepared.